was very scared because my opponent looked very confident. I learned from combat versus bodybuilding or strength training that you don't have to look strong, you actually have to be strong.
Welcome everyone to the Locker Room India YouTube channel, and today we have with us MMAFI National MMA champion Maulika Sharma. So Maulika, what's going on first of all?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So I have my second fight coming up like in 2 weeks time. So I have just been preparing for that right now.
So how has been that preparation? You'll be defending your national champion title this time around. So how are you feeling regarding that?
So actually last time I only had one fight to fight. So it went pretty smooth, but this time they're going to be qualifying rounds because there are so many participants. So I think that I'll have to fight a minimum of 3 fights to actually qualify for the title. So I'm a little bit nervous about that because after my first fight, I was just like in no state to be able to have another fight. But now I have to do back-to-back fights in order to qualify for the main event. So I'm a little nervous about that as to how I'm going to bear all the impact on one day and then fight another day.
So coming to your journey, like how did MMA come to you? Like how did the journey start for you?
So the journey started in lockdown. I am a strength and conditioning coach. So all of my training is around building strength and lifting weights and stuff like that. But when the lockdown happened, I did not have access to much weights. And it sort of got repetitive for me to just be lifting the small dumbbells I had at home. So I wanted to incorporate some kind of cardio, but I don't like the kind of cardio where it's a very slow pace because that's very boring. So that's when I started with boxing. I started boxing in my basement, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed boxing, and then I think from boxing it went up to kickboxing, and then very recently now there's grappling involved. So I mean, right now my grappling isn't all that great. So I don't know if I can call myself someone who does MMA because right now I've just been focusing so much on striking. But I think we're slowly building on becoming like having all the elements of an MMA fighter.
Was it easy that since you were an SNC coach, like was it easy for you for the when you transitioned to combat sports?
Not really, because if you're somebody who lifts weight, you're very stiff. So I did not pay that much attention to my flexibility and mobility the way I do now. So actually, I was very, very stiff. Also, when I was doing strength and conditioning, I sort of had an inclination into bodybuilding. And if you're aware about one of the bodybuilding categories, it's bikini athlete, wherein you are judged for your glutes, you're judged for your overall frame, and the frame is usually small waist and big lower body. And when you do that, you sort of, when you are doing the bikini preparation, you sort of get used to a very hyper extended lower back, okay, which totally spoils your alignment. So when I started MMA, I just realized how unaligned my body is. Like my glutes were fully like jutting out of my spine, and without glutes, you can't really generate any sort of power in combat. So I just realized that my glutes, even though they were big, they were not strong, and I was not able to utilize the the strength of my glutes into any sort of impact because it was just of bodybuilding. So it was very difficult for me to actually feel like my punches are making any impact, even though I was muscular and it looked like I could cause damage. Like I was not able to really have any impact in my punches or kicks because my mobility was lacking and I was not utilizing my hips so much. So I'm not sure. I used to keep thinking, is it an advantage or a disadvantage that I have been, lifting weights, because that kind of strength and combat strength is very, very different.
A quick question here: doing weights or doing MMA, which takes a bigger toll on your body, as someone who has done both?
Definitely combat training. Definitely combat training. In fact, with weights, like I never felt any sort, like I did feel exhaustion in my body, but it wasn't the kind of exhaustion the way I feel in MMA. Because when we're doing MMA, you're sort of you're training beyond, like you're sort of training in a very stressful situation. Like with weights, if you're exhausted, you keep the weights down. But with MMA, once you're exhausted, your coach starts pushing you then. Like so many times I'm like super exhausted and we're sparring and I keep my hands down, but then my coach will be like, keep hitting her, keep hitting her. So like the circumstance of lifting weights versus training for combat is so different. And I think combat takes a much bigger toll on your body, which is why I think even recovery becomes way, way more important in combat than it is, I think, in strength training.
So once you started boxing in your like basement or something, like how did you move this training to a gym, and how did you take up a formal training after this initial starting?
Okay. So when I started boxing, I wasn't really boxing with somebody who is into fighting. I was just boxing with a coach who sort of trains people to make them lose weight. So it wasn't really any sort of combat training. If anything, it was the opposite of that. Because when I actually tried to train with people who do proper boxing, I realized that I was nowhere. Like I wasn't even on a 1 to 10 on a level of 1. Like I had no footwork, I had no, understanding of fighting, of having my guard up, nothing. Then I realized that I need to, level up a little bit and I need to be training under somebody who trains people to fight, because that's what I wanted to do. So then I switched from boxing to kickboxing and MMA, because I just felt like if it's a fight, like it's the most authentic way is MMA. Like boxing is still rules and restricted, but MMA is like going all out. So then I moved from boxing to finding an MMA coach and going ahead with that.
So when you started out, did you have this in your mind that you wanted to compete, or did you just do it for the fun of doing it?
So I started off doing it for the fun of doing it, but over time, to keep that fire alive, you need like a purpose. So I think fighting is the purpose. Like I still feel like I am not like a fighter. I don't have it in me. Like some people just have it in them. I don't know how to explain that, but like some people are eager to hit. I don't necessarily feel I'm in that category. I still get a little scared to hit, to get hurt. uh so like I don't think I'm like 100% like in the whole fighter zone right now. But sorry, what was your question?
So did you have this plan to fight in the initial stage itself, or did it come after some time?
Yeah, so I did want to fight because it gave me a purpose, but I still have a lot of fear about fighting and stuff like that. So I didn't always want to fight, but I feel like it gives you a direction to sort of keep working on your skill, and I need that motivation. If I don't have a motivation or a goal, I sort of get very bored and complacent and lazy. So this is just like a personal goal for me rather than wanting to become the best fighter.
So you won the MMAFI national. So how did that opportunity come to you to compete at the nationals? When did that happen, and how did you grab that opportunity?
So MAFI is the organization of my coach. So he came up with the event, and I didn't go for MMA. I went for stand-up MMA. So that's sort of MMA for amateurs, like for people who just have started. So I got into that. In that, it was 30 seconds. If you're on the ground, like you have to stand up. It's not like full blown grappling. And my opponent was also, it was her first match. It was my first match. So I won't necessarily say this was like a championship win or a title win. It was just one fight between two people who are fighting for the first time. So then Sir told me about that opportunity. I was sort of chickening out again. I was like, no, 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 next time, next time, next time. But then I realized like I'm gonna keep doing that unless like I just go for it. And then my sir, Mayur sir, he told me you should do this. It's not grappling. You'll at least get a taste of what it is to be in the ring, to be in the octagon. So then I went for it.
So what all went through your head when you stepped into the cage for the first time? Like what was the emotions like?
I was very scared because my opponent looked very confident. She entered the ring with like the most serious face. So I was very, very, very intimidated. I was very scared. At the time and even now, like I don't have 100% like confidence in my skill. Like I feel like I lack in a lot of spaces. And my mind sort of tends to focus on that more than what I have learned and the skills that I have, I tend to focus on what I don't have. So I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear stepping in. Your adrenaline rush is there. So that makes it very exciting. Plus, I had all my close friends and my family there. So it was a very nice atmosphere, and I won. That added the cherry on top. I don't know how I would have felt if I would lose, because I'm a bad loser. So
So once you secured that win and once you hit the gym back after the whole win, did you level up your training or did you started taking the sport more seriously?
yes, I do. So immediately after the fight, I think my head was in a very bad state. Like, I had not endured that sort of hurt on my face, on my head. So I was a little off for a week. And like, I had built so much of my training and schedule around the fight that when the fight got over, I sort of felt a little purposeless for a bit. But then there was the opportunity to have another fight, and then I really wanted to perform much better, especially in terms of my cardiovascular health. I was My stamina was very, very bad in this first fight. Like, every round I kept giving up. I almost went in the corner, and I kept telling my coach that, listen, I can't fight anymore, I might just puke. And then I know this time around that's something that I don't want. So I've been really working on my cardio, on my stamina, to sustain those 3 rounds. So that's something that has changed. And of course, like, over time, I have been giving more practice to my basics, just getting the basics right.
The women's division generally in Indian MMA is a bit shallow. So, what do you think, or how has MMA benefited you, and what do you think can be done to bring more women fighters into the sport?
So MMA has sort of given me perspective of what fitness really is. Because I was so much into the whole bodybuilding and strength atmosphere, I didn't realize that those are not skills that are 100% applicable in your day-to-day life. Like, you're not gonna go and pick up like 100 kgs of a rock off the floor. That's something that you're not gonna need. But having like basic, like being light on your toes to be able to run back and forth in situations where you have to, that is so much more applicable. Or just training in MMA opens up your body so much is something that I have understood. And the fact that it opens up your body allows you to just do your day-to-day tasks more easily. So I would just suggest that even if you don't want to fight, have a day or two where you do combat sport training, because it's not just helpful in self-defense, but also it will have a translated effect on your overall health, because it's going to open up your joints, it's going to improve your flexibility, it's going to make you sharper in your mind, and it's going to give you more control over your body. And once you have more control over your body, every day-to-day task becomes easier. Getting from one place to the other gets easier. Uh, your just sharpness to pick up something before it falls, all of those things, which I feel is the most important thing in fitness, because fitness is not lifting heavy weights, or you're not ever lifting cars and rocks on trees off the floor in day-to-day life. You're doing basic movements, and as we are getting older, people are struggling to do those basic movements. So there's something that we need to incorporate in our fitness journey that actually makes you not just looking extremely fit, but actually being fit. I think that's the difference I learned from combat versus bodybuilding or strength training, that you don't have to look strong, you actually have to be strong.
So, come back to your upcoming fight. So, what can the fans expect when you step into the cage again?
uh i I think last time I sort of always had my guard down, and I got hit on my face a lot. So I think I want to be more careful with that. I want to have better technique. I felt like in my last fight, I saw bits of it where I was getting angry, because I was getting hit, I was getting angry, and I was reacting based on that. So I don't want to do that this time. I want to be a little more calm, little more composed, and a little more like technical rather than emotional with the fight. So I think that can be expected, hopefully.
Uh, so, lastly, for someone who has not tried out MMA, what advice or what tip would you give?
Um, for someone who has not tried MMA, I feel like it'll bring a whole new world into your life. That's what it did for me. Like, I feel like now in the modern day era, like, everybody's searching for a purpose. We feel purposeless. And when you join a sport, it gives you a sense of purpose. And I think that's what MMA did. It gave me a sense of purpose. And I think that's what it'll do for anyone, any sport. But I would say MMA more specifically because I'm biased towards it. I really, really enjoy it. And I feel like it is something that's very enjoyable. Like, I'm a trainer, so I have included like combat style fitness training in my clients' routines, and they love it. They love it. So I think the fact that it's so enjoyable and there's so much to it makes it very, very fun. So I really would suggest anybody, who's, getting a little bored of their gym routine, or, who's not able to find a purpose in life, to just dedicate yourself to a sport, into bettering yourself, and you'll just feel a lot better.